In this lesson, we're going to focus on the JSP code that is part of the introductory application. To begin, however, I'd like to do a very short overview of JSP. It stands for Java Server Pages. It's a tried and true technology for Java web apps. We'll refine this overview as time goes on, but for now, there's a couple of points that should be made. So to begin, a JSP page is just a text document that has a .jsp extension, and it's a mix of HTML and CSS and code, and we'll see that in a bit. The code, by the way, is translated automatically, so you and I as programmers aren't responsible for doing the code translation. Now, there are different versions of JSP. There's version 1.x and version 2.x, with various subversions, of course, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5. I'm going to refer to these as old style and new style, and I'm going to begin with old style. There are still some advantages to old style. There are some things that are easier to do, in my view, in old style than in new style, but mostly we'll be seeing new style. You can, by the way, intermix the two. So, as noted, JSP pages are templates, but they are rendered into straight HTML, CSS, and perhaps, of course, with some embedded JavaScript. The JSP scripts, as noted a couple of times now, are translated, and they're translated into servlet instances. For now, I'm just going to rely on your basic understanding of what a servlet is. It's standard Java code. There are methods and so on. We'll look at that in detail down the road, but for now, what we care about is that JSP scripts actually become servlet instances. That's what happens during the translation. So, JSP, you might say, is really a specialized templating language that generates servlets. Now, with this very rough overview, let's move into the convert.jsp code. This is the third file in that introductory application. The first piece is input.html, that's straight HTML, web.xml, the deployment document, and now the conversion script. So you can see starting at the top, we begin with some HTML stuff, familiar HTML. We come down to the body, and now basically we get into the code. Deliberately, I've introduced three types of old-style JSP code. The first thing begins here. You see angle bracket, %shine, bang. This is a so-called declaration, and you can use this to declare fields or methods just as you would in straight Java. By the way, the declaration could actually occur any place in this file. I've put all of the stuff in the body in order to make the thing a bit more readable. The second sort of code, and we'll come back and look at the details in a moment, consists of a so-called scriptlet. So this is standard Java code. Think of this as the body of a method, because that's basically what it's going to become at translation time. Finally, down here, this is a JSP old-style expression. It's a convenient way to write things back to the browser. So you see it's angle bracket %equals, which basically means write this string as part of the response. Now, I'd like to go back and look at the Chrome browser to make a point, and that point is this. You can see here that we're looking at the rendered JSP page in the browser, and if we go in and view the source, I think it's pretty much what you'd expect. The code has gone away, and what remains, of course, is just straight HTML with a tiny bit of CSS. So a JSP page is rendered into what I'm going to call pure HTML. That's a bit of an overstatement because the HTML may include some CSS, it may include some JavaScript and other goodies that we'll get into later. But for now, this is a nice example of the sort of point I want to make. JSP, the code part, goes away. What comes down to the browser as the HTTP response is just a straight HTML page. Now, let's get back to convert.jsp and look a little bit at the details. So I'm going back to the declaration. I declare two variables of type float, var for the Fahrenheit temperature, cent for the centigrade temperature. These, again, are standard fields. They're going to be initialized during translation to 0.0f in the usual way in Java. This is now my little code snippet. So the first thing I need to do is read the user's input. And I'm going to get that as a string because, of course, the user input text in the application. So just to go back and review that very, very quickly, if we bring this back and go to another temperature, I put in 99.9. That, of course, is text. It's going to come to me as text, so I'm basically reading it as text in this line. And the line is request get parameter tempf. Tempf, again, is the name of that input box. I trim it just in case there's any white space on either end because I'm going to convert it in the next line. So I'm going to use a utility method provided in the float class. And then I'm going to do the conversion to centigrade. And there's the standard formula below. And finally, down here, what I'm going to do is write the result back to the browser. So again, just eyeball it. If you come back, you can see right up here, this is basically the line that we've just written. Now, since you're programmers, you can tell already that I'm taking a lot of things for granted here. For one thing, if you come down here, I'm assuming that the user actually did input something. What if I get the empty string? What if I get some nonsense like foobar or something like that, a string that will not convert into a number? What are we going to do then? I've not yet dealt with error handling and other things that we're going to have to come to terms with, but for now, the important points are this. You get a feel here for what a JSP page looks like. You can see the mix of HTML and code, and this is a good start for us. What we're going to do now with this application is to refine it. We'll redo it in various ways, but this very first introductory application will be a good start. It'll be something that represents for us the baseline.